reason I'm doing this video is to further showcase the fact that a lot of these individuals who always want to state that they need black people need to help, or we need your help, and look what we did for you back during this time, and yada yada yada. These were the exact same people historically that had over 200,000 African enslaved people to build up what it is that they have at this current point in time, but yet they don't want to talk about that. They don't want to bring that up when they want to talk about how much they helped and how they decided to, abolish slavery and all of these other types of things. But remember, slavery was good enough to build up the systems of what you have at this moment in time. But before we get into the information, let's just go over a few of the videos that I've given you guys before, where specifically people have stated that they did X, Y, and Z for enslaved people.
Do you know what I love about black and brown people? Well, there's a lot, but one of the things I love is that even though we come from completely different places, historically our paths cross all the time. And throughout history, we have found ways to lean on each other. Whether it's Mexico opening its borders to allow slaves to escape and become free.
I think it's funny how everybody's true colors are coming out, especially the black people, because y'all are quick to forget what country you guys fled to shelter when you were slaves.
Join us. Join A Day Without Immigrants, Monday, February 3rd. We need to send a clear message. We have been part of your marches. We have been part of your movements.
One thing that I have to ask is got me really bothered is, where are y'all Black Lives Matter people at, man? When y'all needed us Mexicans and all my peoples was there, standing, marching along with y'all right there, ready to take out whatever needed to be done. So now where y'all at, man?
I'm amazed of how many people from the black community are telling me to go back to Mexico, telling Mexicans to go back to Mexico because we're illegal and it's a crime. It was also a crime when your ancestors went to Mexico, when they were escaping the white people and Mexico helped them. A lot of Mexicans got killed for that. They helped them. They help your people. We didn't oppress you guys.
You guys, they're saying we're learning from them. We've been Indian our whole lives. You've been Indian since you downloaded TikTok. They get our information and then they twist it and try to blackwash it. I'm here to correct all that. Y'all are not the Indians. Y'all are not indigenous from here. I actually don't know where you guys are from, but y'all weren't here with us.
Let me tell you, Mexicans are the biggest haters to ever walk this planet. They hate on their children, they hate on their cousins, they hate on their family, they hate on their coworkers. They're just certified haters, bro. The moment you're doing good in life, regardless, whether that could be your son sometimes or your daughter or your cousin, the moment you start doing good in life, man, they just start tearing you down.
Mexico recognized its third root years ago as West African. This is very true. Spanish brought West Africans to Mexico and enslaved them in Mexico. Well, it was called New Spain at the time, since colonialism.
And Mexican people, y'all can bring y'all ass here. You ain't slick. It's your turn. Did y'all know that Mexicans owned enslaved Africans for some 300 years? And in fact, it helped build up over 65% of what we know Mexico to be today. It helped build up their entire economy. Before I get into it, y'all, this is my only TikTok. It is at Kim Possible. I also have an Instagram and a YouTube that's in my bio. Please give me a follow. But without further ado, let's get into it real quick. From the early 1520s to the very end of the Mexican War of Independence in 1810, Mexico imported some 255,000 Africans just to solely rebuild their economy and also their population. Now, before this was even called Mexico, this was the land of the Aztecs. We all know the Mayans and the Aztecs. The Incas was, I believe, South America, but Mexico was Mayans and Aztecs. That was that land. Their population declined tremendously once the white people in Spain came over with smallpox. It went from 27 million people to just 1 million people in under 10 years. So Spain, being the colonizers that they are, thought it'd be best to bring Africans to replace this population and to rebuild this economy and rebuild this country.
Despite the dominant narrative African descendants also have a history and presence in Mexico. In 2015, the Mexican government conducted an interim census that incorporated African descendants into the categories of race and ethnicity, which had not been done since the 1830s. Citizens had the opportunity to self-identify, and almost 2 million peoples identified as African descendants. After the result of the 2015 census were released, media outlets immediately questioned where African descendants in the interim census came from, some speculating that they were recent immigrants from West Africa or from the Caribbean. Mexico was a slave trading country in the 16th century, having a population of around 200,000 West African slaves that outnumbered the Spanish colonists for decades and was for some time the largest in the Americas. Black slaves were typically used by the Spanish to act as foremen, overseeing the indigenous populations, and many of the mostly male slave population went on to marry indigenous women. Therefore, and due to the many resulting mixed-race offspring, Black Mexicans were all but forgotten about for centuries, as their bloodlines mixed with other indigenous communities and Mestizo people of Mexico. The longer history was little appreciated. In the 1500s and the early 1600s, New Spain, colonial Mexico, had one of the highest importation rates of enslaved Africans to the Americas, leading to large populations in cities. In their first decade of independence, the Mexican government abolished the slave trade in 1824 and the institution of slavery in 1829. As a result, countless African Americans in southern United States took advantage of this new law and participated in the southern route of the Underground Railroad, fleeing to their neighboring Mexico, quite contrary to the standard narrative of slaves seeking freedom north. During the colonial era in Mexico, which was known as New Spain, Spanish colonists enslaved and owned people of African descent. Labor shortages. Following the conquest and the devastating decline of the indigenous population due to disease and Spanish mistreatment, the Spanish colonists sought alternative sources of labor. Demand for African slaves. Bishop Bartolome de las Casas initially advocated for the rights of indigenous people, suggested the use of enslaved Africans, believing them to be more physically suited to hard labor. Spanish participation in slave trade. The Spanish crown granted concessions for its subjects in the Americas to import and use slaves, initiating Spanish involvement in the transatlantic slave trade. Portuguese and British slave traders. Portuguese and British slave traders were particularly active in bringing enslaved Africans to Mexican territories. Significant importance. New Spain, colonial Mexico, had a high rate of African slaves importation during the 1500s and the early 1600s. Use of slave labor. Enslaved Africans were used in various economic activities, including mining, plantation and ranches, urban areas as domestic workers, artisans, and laborers. Act and abolition. Slavery played a significant role in Mexico's early history, but the Mexican government abolished the slave trade in 1824 and the institution of slavery in 1829. It's also important to note that the presence of enslaved Africans in Mexico led to the development of unique Afro-Mexican communities and a rich cultural exchange. Their influence is evident in aspects of Mexican culture like the fandango and the song La Bamba, and they played a vital role in Mexico's independence. However, this history has often been overlooked in the dominant narrative of Mexican identity. We were all able to hear that information, right? And we were also on top of that able to see some of the other figures from the community who specifically like to go out there on the limb and state that, oh, hey, well, Black Americans, we were there for you. We allowed you guys to come directly over into our lands. You were other people's property, and we ignored what it is that they stated, no matter what it is that they said, and we sacrificed our lives in order to just protect you. Notice how people always want to paint the story. Whenever it deals with Black people, notice Notice how people always want to paint the story as if they were just the utmost angelic heroes directly out here. They were just doing God's bidding, and they sacrificed life and limb and family and home in order to protect us. Mind you, these are the exact same people, as stated historically. The reason why they have the darkest skin possible is also because they have a mixture of West African within them, because they had over 200,000 West African slaves on their lands. Color me surprised. And who did they happen to get those slaves by? You guessed it, the Europeans. The Europeans. Like I said, the real Spanish individuals are in Spain, right? Because those are the people that colonized those over in South America and other places as well. Notice how they want to, again, going back to those videos, notice how they want to paint themselves as the angelic heroes. It seems a little bit reminiscent as white people in America when they like to say, oh, well, if whites were so bad, then why did we get rid of slavery? Okay, so you want us to clap for you and to give you a pat on the back for getting rid of something that should have never existed in the United States to begin with. Number two, you started it, and then somehow, some way, you just woke up one day on the right side of the bed, and you were like, God just gave me an epiphany and told me that we need to free the blacks. So blacks, guess what? You guys are free. Clap it up for the whites, because we did it. Not God, but we did it, right? That's crazy. That's crazy. It's as if both people, both groups, have the exact same ideologies and beliefs about themselves, along with having a certain type of beliefs and ideologies when it deals with quote unquote black people. Very interesting. It's very, very interesting. And it's also funny to note, number three, how both want to take away the significance of the darker complected people who are on their lands. Right? The Europeans, the pagans here, Christians, whatever you want to call them, here in the United States, always want to erase the significance of Black Americans here along with their history. Again, we are the most rebranded individuals on the face of this planet, bar none. Nobody even comes close at all. And this has been happening for a very long time. So this is just another reason why it is that we're tired of a lot of things. So then you go down and you look at Mexico, and you happen to hear from what I read off to you that even though the West Africans played a very significant role and they gave a lot over when it dealt with culture and everything of the sort, that the Mexican people were like, we don't care nothing about that. We are Mexican at the end of the day, and that's all we're going to put out, and that's all we're going to push. We don't care nothing about the West African side. We don't care about how it is that you originally were enslaved, how we used you, how you were the labor force, how you were the ones to help us get our numbers directly back up, because our original colonizers did everything possible to erase us off of our own lands. But even if they decided to do that, we still decided to embrace them more over you, even though you have done way less harm and you have been the utmost helpful versus them. That's crazy. That's a lot of gymnastics to do in order to get to the point of ignoring the significance of the West African people. And then the other funny thing that I like to point out is that where are all of these West Africans at when they want to decide to badmouth people, right? Because this is their history, right? West African, part of Mexico, all this other type of great stuff, right? And a lot of those are probably still there. A lot of those people can probably really trace all of their roots directly back to that coast. But the funniest thing is, I don't hear them going down there and trying to work and have a come up and bad mouthing people there. I only hear of Africans coming to the United States and wanting to attack who? Black Americans. It seems as though people forget or ignore their history. Either one of the two, or maybe option three, both. Just because. But yet a lot of people want to try to tell Black Americans where it is that they come from, who it is that they are, and what it is that they do and don't know, and how it is that everybody else around the world know much more about Black Americans than Black Americans know about themselves. Craziest work. I've never seen this with any other group in existence on the face of this planet, bar none. Nobody can even hold a candle to this. And like I told people before, there's obviously something very special about Black Americans to why it is that everybody around the planet feels the need to have a voice on the topic, to feel the need that they can just say any and everything about Black Americans and just, you know, ain't nothing going to sit up there and happen. Because like I said before, they're not so willing to try to talk real greasy and real slick to a lot of other groups. They're not going to do it. But everybody will make sure to do this to Black Americans, to deem them and to treat them a certain type of way. It's as if we're some type of special group of people and everybody knows it except for us. Very interesting. But, you know, I guess that's neither here nor there. But anyways, let me know what you guys think about this video and everything that I stated in the comment description below. And as always, peace, love, and stay tuned for the next video.